This camera is the Canon R6 Mark II. Originally released in November 2022, this camera is the successor to the very popular R6 from 2020, and it comes with improvements to the megapixel count, video, and continuous shooting speed, among other things. So this has been living in my camera bag for the better part of 3 weeks, thanks Canon for loaning it to me, and I've had such a great time with this. So here's a quick review about this pretty amazing full-frame camera. This is a fun camera to use, and that's down to how easy it is to operate. I won't go into too much detail on the menus and layout, but if you've used a Canon camera before, you'll definitely know what you're doing. And if you haven't, there are tooltips all over that will help you learn certain functions of the camera. The touchscreen is really responsive, and the button layout is easy to get used to and ends up being really intuitive once you get into the flow of things. The autofocus, while not quite magic, it couldn't keep up with my fast-moving dog for example, pretty much always gets it right if you can set it up correctly for what you're shooting. With a little bit of practice, you can get this autofocusing almost like it's directly connected to your brain. Okay, I want that camera now. It's bulkier than many other cameras I've used of late, but what can I say? I love a bit of heft to my camera bodies. The grip is deep, and the clunk of the mechanical shutter is oh so satisfying. This body feels less like mirrorless cameras do these days, and more like an SLR. Like, look at this compared to a 7D from a decade ago. Not much has changed. The bulk of this plus RF lenses does tend to pack out a bag pretty quickly though, so do be aware of that. The body is all plastic, so at least that reduces the weight a little bit. Oh, also it's weather sealed. Found that out the hard way. But what are the photos like? Well, look, I love them. I took a lot of cool photos with this one. Mostly birds, yes. I knew the first thing I had to do when I got this was take it to a wildlife sanctuary and bird show for some of the fastest moving targets available. This helps not only prove just how well the autofocus subject detection works, animals being one of them of course, but also the camera's burst shooting speeds. Here I was making use of its mechanical shutter and 12 raw frames per second, but if you truly want to fill up your SD cards, there is a 40 FPS mode with the electronic shutter. Overall, I'm very happy with the wildlife images that came from that outing, especially those from the excellent 70-200mm lens. I'd also heard some good things about this camera's low light capabilities, so I also took it to Firelight Festival at Docklands in Melbourne. Some of these photos are as high as 25,600 ISO, and yeah, there's definitely some grain there, but these all look pretty alright, and there's plenty more I could do to clean them up if I wanted to. This can get up to 204,800 ISO, but that was never really necessary on my shoots. Again, this camera continues to impress. After coming from the 40.2 megapixels of the Fujifilm X-H2, I am having to rethink just how much I can crop my photos with the 24.2 megapixels this camera offers me, but still, that megapixel count is more than enough in most scenarios. With the flick of this switch, you'll put the camera into video mode with its own set of settings you can customize separately to the photography settings. And it's really good at video too. In fact, you're watching it right now. I'm looking in the monitor and I'm just pretty much blown away by how even a cheap lens like the 35mm here is really good at tracking my eyes with the autofocus, and the skin tone just feels right, straight out of camera. It just all looks good.
What's up, everybody? This is how I make my daily coffee. Whoa!
Yeah, look, we all know coffee reels are a bit naff these days, but I didn't have any other big projects on, so it is a good test to see how this can be used to construct little scenes. This little scene was all shot in C-Log 3, which gives you a bit more latitude for grading and dynamic range. My house is pretty dark and gloomy, so was the day that I shot this, and I was only using the windows to light the scene, but I had a lot of space to correct this with a brighter and more summery feel. Here you can see just how well the new focus breathing correction feature works here. It does a great job removing any focal length shift when autofocusing onto my face. Really impressed with that.
Hot.
I didn't just shoot in C-Log 3 though, this is all just regular footage straight out of camera, and what stands out here is how well the internal stabilization is working on the 200mm lens zoomed all the way in. Those are some smooth birds, baby. Look, as always, there's way more to delve into with this if you're really serious about this as a professional video camera. If that is you, I'd recommend checking out the always excellent Gerald Undone's review if you're thinking of picking this up for work. Link below. I got to admit, in 2023, I find it bizarre that Canon separate PAL and NTSC recording modes. You actually need to go into this menu in order to find 30 FPS and 24 FPS modes if they're not already showing up. But once I found that, all was forgiven because this can even do 4K 60 uncropped, which is pretty great to have access to. It can do 6K ProRes RAW, but you will need a ProRes RAW capable monitor, which I think is limited to Atomos at the moment. It sucks that this is a micro HDMI connection, especially when the only way to access 6K is through a monitor. The connection is just not sturdy enough for my liking, at least for professional work where 6K ProRes RAW might actually be needed. But for most online video, if you can get over that HDMI connection, I think it'll be a fantastic bit of kit for years to come. I do have one gripe I want to talk about before we wrap up, and that is to do with charging. Like most high-end Canon cameras, this takes the LP6NH batteries, and you can charge those using the provided camera battery charger that comes with the camera. But maybe you might want to charge this directly using USB-C. That's a pretty common feature in cameras these days. It turns out most chargers won't do anything when you plug it in. But don't be fooled, you can charge it like this. You just need a power bank or USB charger that is capable of USB-C PD, which is a fast charging standard. Now, Canon will gladly sell you a version of this for up to 199 Australian dollars, but literally anything with PD should work. This $30 Samsung charger will do just fine, for example. Look, this annoyance is less about the camera itself, I still think it's great, and more about the fact that Canon are deliberately ripping off their customers with a glorified USB cable. Whatever you do not buy this. With that being the only major annoyance, this camera pretty much hits on everything I look for with creative tools. It's easy to use, easy to learn, and most importantly, it doesn't really get in your way when you're trying to create stuff. It just lets you do it to the best of your and its ability. I think it's a great camera. If you're looking at upgrading from older Canon gear, particularly if you're already in the RF system, this is a great camera. I think you'll love it, and it'll do pretty much everything that you want it to. And if it doesn't, well, you probably want the R5, and you know that already. For people who are moving into Canon's RF system for the first time, it's a bit of a tougher sell because the price of entry is really steep. This body alone right now costs about 3,700 Australian dollars, and that's before you factor in the quite often very expensive RF lenses. What can I say? RF ain't cheap. That said, if you do have the cash and are drawn to Canon's RF system, this is a pretty fantastic camera to start with. Even if you're fairly new to photography or video, it's just a really easy camera to use and an absolute joy to shoot on, no matter what your skill level is. If you want to chat any more about the camera, hit me up in the comments below, I'll be there. Or you can talk to me on TikTok or Instagram, all of my socials are down in the description. Or if you want to see my favorite current camera, there is a video somewhere on the screen right here. Click that and I'll see you over there.